Welcome to Believers Eyes Academy. In today's topic of the day discussion, we will be discussing something from the polity perspective, which is of utmost importance considering how often Supreme Court has intervened in this particular dimension of the discussion, mostly covering the fight or the conflict between the freedom of religion versus right to education. So, freedom of religion is pretty much there in news. Time and again, we come under a lot of conflicts that this particular article of the fundamental rights face. But here in this particular topic, we are understanding a different dimension where it is in conflict with right to education. So let's understand what that is in today's video. So why are we discussing this? To understand the context, recently the Supreme Court is examining whether the government school playgrounds and public parks can be diverted for religious or cultural festivals, raising constitutional conflict between Article 21A, which is right to education, and the freedom of religion under Article 25, right? So, if we try and understand the background, we have many instances when high courts have actually set standards by giving certain verdicts, especially when the usage of school playgrounds are mostly diverted, or let's say the school playgrounds, or let's say something public is diverted to be used for a religious function or a ceremony, that it directly comes in conflicts or comes in conflict, or let's say conflicts the very secular nature of the country, right? When India calls itself a secular democracy, then using the public places for any particular religious ceremonies or functions or the celebration of any festives, right, doesn't actually hold or uphold the secular feature of the country, right? So that's what was reiterated in most of the high court's decisions. And if we try and understand the background, the very recently Allahabad High Court in the year 2025 stated, clearly underscored the importance of school playground as an important feature of the right to education, because that directly contradicts with the right to education, where a school playground which is or which has supposed to be used by the school students were eventually used for festive even eventually used as festive venues, right? So this, the high courts have constantly held or given a verdict that the right to education always supersedes anything that contravenes this particular fundamental right. And that's what we have seen in the Allahabad High Court case, where it noted that school playgrounds was converted into festival venues, making sports activities impossible. So hence, this diversion was declared ex facie illegal by the Allahabad High Court. And another instance was the Supreme Court reference in 2018, especially in the Jyoti Jagran Mandal versus the Delhi Municipal Commission. So it raised constitutional questions on using the state-owned land for religious purposes in a secular state. As we discussed, India is a secular state, and any religious, or let's say any state-owned public properties, if it is being used by any one particular religious community to or let's say for celebration purposes or for conducting any programs, now obviously it contradicts the secular feature of the country. So hence Supreme Court in the year 2018 under Jyoti Jagran Mandal versus the NDMC reiterated that, or let's say questioned about this particular dimension. And afterwards, moving forward, we'll have to see all the previous judgments also. One is the important Calcutta High Court 2023 judgment, which clearly stated that school playgrounds cannot be treated as public festival grounds. And Allahabad High Court in the year 2019, it clearly said no community can claim public spaces for religious use, even temporarily. So now, what are we trying to understand? That the judiciary is consistent in defining that right to education always prevails right to religion, right? Especially considering that right to religion is not absolute. So the right to religion under Article 25 is subjected to certain restrictions, right? and it is not an absolute right, so that it tries to contravene the right to education under Article 21. So we can see how consistently the judiciary has underscored the importance of a right to education by making sure that it always supersedes right to religion. And if we try and understand what right it is affecting, one is most importantly Article 21, which is the right to education, because playground is part and parcel of educational infrastructure. Diversion of this facility to the children's affects their learning and holistic development. And most importantly, it is also affecting the right of religion, because citizens have the right to freely practice religion, but it is subject to public order, morality and health. That's what we discussed. Of course, both of these Article 21A and Article 25 are a part of fundamental rights. Both are very fundamental for the people, but to understand right to religion, it is not an absolute right, which means it is subject to certain restrictions. And what are the restrictions or exceptions? Public order, morality and health. So hence you cannot excise Article 25 as an absolute fundamental right, stating that since it is my right for the practice of the or propagation of a particular religion, that I can go use any public places for the religious activities. So that is also one of the important article. Now, under the DPSP, it is also affecting Article 41 and 45, because state is obligated to promote education and protect public resources, right? So state has the utmost roles and responsibilities to promote education and public resources, and not appease any one particular religious activity, or it could even be a political activity also. And also talking about the last important feature that it affects, it is this very secular nature of the country, as mentioned in the preamble, that state must maintain neutrality in matters of religion. So all these things are important, because this is a very important decision or a judgment, and this is something which we have seen over a period of time, and this is an important article to keep in mind. So hence we are discussing all of this. So what is the way forward then? Way forward for this particular issue. One is clear policy framework, means both the central and the state governments should issue uniform guidelines banning use of school grounds for religious or even political events. Means a proper legislation has to be made, laws has to be passed both from the central and state level, so that clear guidelines are issued in terms of how school grounds are used, or let's say how school grounds cannot be used for any religious and even any political events which are directly affecting the learning of the children in that particular school. And then talking about then where should these activities should take place, talking about it, alternative spaces, right? Dedicated festival grounds or community halls has to be provided or developed in regional levels, or let's say in any district or state, to avoid burdening the public institutions, so that on usually the riots don't happen. And these kind of dedicated spaces, the festival grounds, can be specifically made at a place where it does not come under the confluence of any religious institutions also. For example, the celebration of let's say Eid, or let's say the celebration of Ganesh Chaturthi, right, should be made, or let's say even if any particular places are dedicated or used for the celebration of these kind of activities, must be at a place or at a particular environment which is absolutely neutral and does not contradict or does not intervene any religious sentiments of the people, right? Because that is what the biggest reason why communal violences are prevailing in India, because of the rampant use of places, the public places, for the religious ceremonies or the festivals. So hence it has utmost importance, and it is high time that the government start thinking about these kind of alternative spaces that it can dedicate for the people to celebrate their festivals and even any sort of organizations, or let's say the programs under the political aspect also. Then talking about the rights, it talks about the right which needs to be balanced, right? So the court must continue applying the principle of reasonable restriction on Article 25 to protect education, as we discussed, because Article 25, it is not an absolute right. So if you remember that one point, this is pretty easy to understand. Means the court has to time and again give life to the reasonable restrictions that are provided in Article 25 so that it can protect the right to education. Then the important one is to bring administrative accountability. Local authorities must ensure public spaces remain accessible and free from encroachments. So we talked about providing alternative spaces or grounds. So now it is also the important responsibility of the local administration to make sure that these dedicated public places remain accessible for every religion, every community, every people, and also these are free from encroachment from the public or the private. And last but not the least, awareness, because promoting community understanding that education and public access to spaces are long-term rights while festivals are temporary needs. So an awareness also must be created amongst the people, because for the sake of celebration, something which is going to give huge returns for the country on a long term, like for example education, right? Educating people, or let's say a right to education, or let's say even for that matter providing sufficient or ample environment or conducive environment for children to study is a long term investment that any country can do to their due to their youth population or due to their children, as compared to giving rights to any particular religion, or giving any upliftment to a particular community to just celebrate their festivals, which is just a temporary need, right? Because every other year, if it is concerned with a particular festival, let's say Ganesh Chaturthi, every other year there is Ganesh Chaturthi happening. If it is in terms of Eid, every other year Eid definitely happens. So it is a temporary need, just to make sure that the sentiments of the people are not being affected because of the celebration that which comes every year. Something long term, that is education, should not be diluted, should not be ignored as what is important, and this awareness has to be created amongst the people. So a community approach, right? Community approach. And it is also important that rules and regulations, or let's say the political parties, also has to take it as their utmost concern towards creating the political, or let's say communal harmony, by making sure that they don't use these things for let's say appeasing their particular vote banks, right? So that is also one of the important things. Even the political parties also should take care. So awareness is one of the most important thing, and the last but not the final thing. Now coming to the end of the video, we will try and solve one prelims question. Consider the following statements. Article 21A of the Constitution makes free and compulsory education for children a fundamental right. The right under Article 25 to freely profess and practice religion is absolute and not subject to any restrictions. The directive principles of state policies include provisions relating to promotion of education. Which of the above statements are correct? So use the comment section, leave your answers below. Anyway, that's all for this particular video. I hope it is very clear the conflict between the right to education and the right to your religion, because ultimately the very decision made by the Allahabad High Court is not just about a playground. It is the fundamental principle on which the judiciary is trying to tell the people that it is not just about a playground, but the fundamental feature of any country, or let's say India's situation, the fundamental nature of the India, where it is clearly reinstating that public resources must not be used for any particular religious activity or political activity other than what it is actually designated for, right? So this is very important to keep in mind. So this judgment upholds that in a secular democracy like India, the classroom and the playground must remain spaces for learning and not for politics or religion. So I hope you have enjoyed and liked the video. So we will meet again with another video on the same topic of the day playlist. Until then, signing off, this is Madan Gopal. Have a great day.